Enoch does not arrive at heaven and describe clouds. He describes a structure. In chapter 14 of the Book of Enoch, he is carried beyond the familiar world until he reaches a place surrounded by something that looks like fire. Ahead of him stands a great house unlike anything built by human hands. Its walls appear crystalline. Its floor seems made from a material as clear as ice, and fire moves through the structure without destroying it. And Enoch is afraid to go inside. That detail changes the mood of the entire account because this is supposed to be the realm closest to the divine, yet the man entering it does not react as though he has reached a peaceful refuge. He falls forward, his body begins shaking. He describes himself as overwhelmed by fear, while beings far more powerful than humans move around him as though they belong there. Then, another structure appears beyond the first. It is larger, its entrance burns, and its ceiling resembles the path of stars and lightning. Beneath Enoch's feet is a surface he struggles to describe using anything available in the human world. At the center of this place is a throne surrounded by fire. The account reads less like someone trying to explain an abstract afterlife, and more like a traveler attempting to describe an environment whose materials do not behave normally. That distinction becomes important because Enoch repeatedly describes movement. He passes boundaries, enters chambers, approaches restricted areas, encounters beings assigned to different locations, and is escorted farther inward. Someone is deciding where he can and cannot go. Popular images of heaven usually flatten everything into one eternal destination, but the world Enoch enters has separation built into it, and surviving copies prove that these descriptions are not a medieval invention. Fragments of First Enoch were discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, beginning with the finds near Qumran in 1947. Multiple Aramaic copies survived there, showing that Jewish communities were reading versions of this material before Christianity had fully emerged. One fragment, identified as 4Q204, preserves material associated with Enoch's heavenly journey. Far away from Qumran, another tradition protected something the Western Christian world eventually lost. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserved the Book of Enoch in Ge'ez, treating it as scripture, while churches across Europe excluded it from their biblical canon. So the unsettling question is not whether a strange medieval writer invented an elaborate heaven centuries after Christianity. The description was already circulating in the ancient world. And once Enoch is allowed deeper inside, the heavenly realm becomes much harder to reduce to harps, clouds, and eternal rest. The beings Enoch encounters are occupied. Some appear connected to the movements of the heavens themselves. The text describes angels associated with the sun, stars, natural cycles, and forces operating over the earth. Their existence suggests an ordered cosmos, in which heavenly beings have responsibilities rather than simply standing before God in endless worship. Enoch is shown pathways used by celestial bodies and is given explanations for how portions of creation operate. The heavens begin to resemble an enormous system whose visible effects are experienced below. That becomes stranger when punishment appears inside the same cosmic order. Enoch encounters beings who are confined. They are not human souls experiencing the familiar Christian image of hell. They belong to the supernatural world itself, yet they have violated rules and now exist under restraint. In parts of the Enochic tradition, rebellious angels are imprisoned while awaiting a future judgment. They can see that Enoch is able to move where they cannot, and some appeal for intervention. The man walking through their prison is still alive, still human, and somehow has access to authorities that these supernatural beings have lost. The scene creates an uncomfortable picture of heaven because there are laws here, and those laws can be broken. Powerful beings can be removed from their positions, while judgment can be delayed and the accused remain confined. Punishment is only one function Enoch encounters. Elsewhere appears the garden associated with righteousness, filled with extraordinary trees and fragrances. The famous tree later connected with wisdom is described with physical features. Its appearance, its fruit, and even its smell. Enoch does not merely hear that paradise exists, he examines it. His guide explains why certain things are there and when they will serve their purpose. That means the garden is connected to a larger sequence of events. Some parts of the heavenly world are waiting, others are operating, and others are holding prisoners until an appointed judgment. The farther Enoch travels, the more the realm seems governed by timing and assignment. Then he encounters something even more unsettling than imprisoned angels. He encounters the idea that human lives are being accounted for before humans ever reach the end of them. The Book of Enoch repeatedly returns to books, tablets, and heavenly knowledge. Actions on earth do not disappear when nobody else sees them. They are known and preserved. The heavenly world contains beings associated with records and judgment, suggesting that human conduct becomes part of an account maintained beyond human society. For an ancient audience, the idea would have been immediately recognizable. Kings kept records, courts kept records, temples kept records, and debts could survive because someone had written them down. Enoch takes that familiar system and places it above the entire human world. No locked room is private enough. No king is powerful enough to destroy the archive. And death does not begin the accounting process because the record already concerns what people have done while alive. The account becomes even stranger when Enoch is exposed to knowledge extending beyond his own lifetime. He is shown generations, judgments, future events, and patterns that have not yet unfolded from the perspective of the people living through his era. Time inside these visions does not behave like ordinary human time. Events that have not happened on earth can already be spoken of in heaven. If the heavenly record can contain future generations, then the beings maintaining it are not simply collecting history as it occurs. From Enoch's point of view, at least part of the record exists ahead of him. The implications become difficult because a human being experiences life as a series of choices made one moment after another. Yet Enoch enters a realm where the result of history can apparently be viewed from somewhere outside that sequence. The text never gives a modern scientific explanation for how such a thing would work. It simply places Enoch in front of a reality where knowledge, judgment, and time operate differently from the world he came from. And Enoch himself is about to become the strangest example. Until this point, he has been the visitor. He has watched, listened, and been shown places humans ordinarily cannot enter. But by chapter 71, the boundary between observer and inhabitant begins to disappear. The later Enochic material describes an ascent that ends very differently from an ordinary vision. Enoch is brought into the presence of the highest heavenly beings. He encounters the head of days, surrounded by an environment of overwhelming brightness, fire, and beings whose existence appears inseparable from the power filling the place. Enoch's condition changes. The language presents a transformation so complete that his former identity no longer seems sufficient to describe what he has become. This is where one of the most controversial passages in the entire Enochic tradition appears. Enoch is associated with the figure called the Son of Man. That title carries enormous weight for Christian readers because the New Testament repeatedly places Son of Man on the lips of Jesus. Yet the Enochic material existed within Jewish tradition before the New Testament reached its final form. Scholars have spent generations arguing over exactly how chapter 71 should be understood, how the passage developed, and whether Enoch is being directly identified with the Son of Man figure or being brought into a relationship with him. The disagreement itself reveals why the passage is so sensitive. Enoch began the story as a human being permitted to see heaven. Now the text places him dangerously close to an identity that later Christian theology would associate with Christ. His physical fate is already unusual long before that passage. According to Genesis, Enoch does not experience an ordinary death. He walks with God and then disappears because God takes him. The Book of Enoch expands that tiny biblical mystery into an enormous heavenly journey. The man who vanishes from the earth becomes the man who knows where the imprisoned angels are kept, how divine judgment operates, where heavenly records are maintained, and what exists around the throne. his disappearance suddenly feels less like the end of his life and more like relocation. For Christians reading centuries later, that presented a difficult figure to categorize. Enoch was human. He entered heaven alive. He received knowledge withheld from ordinary people. And some versions of the tradition appear to give him a status far beyond that of a simple prophet. That alone does not explain why the book disappeared from most Western Bibles, but it helps explain why later religious authorities treated Enoch with caution. By the early centuries of Christianity, Enoch occupied an unusual position. Some early Christian writers knew the book, and the New Testament letter of Jude contains language connected directly to Enochic tradition. Yet over time, most branches of Christianity stopped treating the entire Book of Enoch as scripture. The Western canon developed without it. Manuscripts became rare in Europe, and eventually, many Western readers knew Enoch primarily as the mysterious figure mentioned briefly in Genesis, rather than as the central character of an enormous surviving religious work. But the text had not vanished. It survived in Ethiopia. For centuries, manuscripts were copied in Ge'ez, preserving the heavenly journeys that had largely disappeared from Western Christian life. Then, archaeological discoveries brought an older layer of the story back into view. The Dead Sea Scrolls demonstrated that Aramaic versions of Enochic writings had existed in antiquity. That mattered because the Ethiopian manuscripts could no longer be dismissed as the isolated product of a much later Christian community. Parts of the tradition reached back deep into the Jewish world before Christianity became the dominant religion of the Roman Empire. Modern translators then faced another problem. Enoch constantly describes things that resist comfortable theological language. Fire behaves like architecture. Heavenly beings manage parts of creation. Prisons exist within the supernatural realm. Books preserve human actions. Future events can already be seen. A living man crosses boundaries separating earth from heaven, and eventually becomes something the text struggles to explain. Translators such as R.H. Charles helped bring Enoch to English-speaking audiences in the early 20th century. Later scholars, including Ephraim Isaac, George Nicolsburg, and James Vanderkam, continued examining the surviving traditions and the difficult language surrounding Enoch's journeys. Their work did not produce one simple picture everyone agrees upon. The text itself is complicated. Different sections appear to come from different periods, and its visions use symbolic language alongside descriptions that sound surprisingly physical. The idea of multiple heavenly regions also appears across several ancient Jewish traditions, making it dangerous to force every surviving description into one perfectly engineered map. Yet removing exaggeration does not make Enoch less strange. It makes the surviving material more interesting. An ancient Jewish text really does describe a man passing through fiery, heavenly structures. It really does contain imprisoned supernatural beings and connect heavenly powers with the operation of the cosmos. It really does describe books of judgment and knowledge extending beyond one human lifetime. And the man seeing all of it is the same Enoch whom Genesis says simply disappeared. That may be the most unsettling part of the entire tradition. The Western Bible gives Enoch only a handful of lines. He walks with God and then he is gone. The larger Enochic tradition claims to know where he went. According to that account, he did not arrive in a silent paradise where nothing happens. He entered a realm filled with boundaries, authority, judgment, knowledge, and beings carrying out functions beyond the human world. Some doors opened for him, while others remained forbidden. He kept moving inward until the distinction between the man entering heaven and the beings who belonged there began to collapse. And somewhere in that ancient text, preserved for centuries in a language most Western Christians never learned to read, Enoch stops sounding like a visitor. He sounds like someone who was never meant to return.